You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Public Comment. We're almost at the end of February, so that means the spring is coming, and this is a year that you definitely want to pay attention to what we're doing here on Public Comment. We're talking a whole lot about municipal politics and much, much more. I'm Khary Frazier of Detroit is Different, and this is a show that really is built off the structure of a notebook. And you're thinking, like, what type of notebook? A municipal notebook about so many inner workings in politics that are covered from the city of Detroit, from Malachi, Barrett to Bridge Detroit. Malachi, how you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing good. Are we getting close to spring? Is that real? I don't think
It feels like it. It feels like it.
Don't get fooled.
It feels like it. You see, Malachi got a whole new look and everything.
That's right. I'm trying to stay warm. At least my upper lip will be warm.
We're rolling with it, and so many things. Spring is a coming, and along with spring, so much in the city of Detroit. We open up with the first thing that we're going to add to stage. We're talking about the reparations task force, and this has been covered a lot. Again, asking for an extension on the recommendations of policies that will come. So right now, to address obviously the historic harms and discriminations that Black Detroiters has faced, this is the process that is underway. Task Force member Jeffrey Robinson is saying that we have to make sure that the diligence happens. Now we have federal government being the biggest opponent of what could happen. So preparation against possible legal scrutiny is what's taking place and why this extension is being asked for. This extension will help with this report that will help to give recommendations for policies that should happen for Detroiters, especially we're thinking about Black Detroiters that have faced historic harms throughout the city of Detroit. Also, when we get into this report, it's also another lens of this. Edith Ford is like, we're ready because we've got young, brilliant Black lawyers that are going to be ready to stand up for the people. And Edith is saying that, hey, we've already dealt with so many different harms. We got to be ready for federal, state, and definitely we're addressing what's happened locally. So Edith stands definitely as a historian herself, knowing that what's been faced with for Black folks. So this extension gives further time to review so much that has been delivered from the Evanston model, the Evanston, Illinois model of reparations that this task force is based off of. Malachi, you've done so much reporting on this. What was happening in the extension request that I believe was happening yesterday?
Yeah, this was interesting because I had been anticipating that the task force would need a little time. And, that's not a moment of like crisis or anything like that. I mean, this is again, complicated work, and they are looking at what's going on around the country where cities are being sued now that have finished reparations proposals. Evanston, Illinois, like you mentioned, was the first city in the country to do this. Really served as like a model for this new wave of municipal reparations being led at the city level, because obviously the feds aren't doing anything about this. Congress isn't doing anything about it, and certainly doesn't seem more likely to do it under a Trump administration. So cities have been taking the charge, but Evanston, was leading the way. They got immediately sued by a conservative group that filed a class action lawsuit, basically alleging that any programs that are benefiting one group or another are discriminatory. So they actually argued that reparations programs are discriminatory against non-Black people, which, an interesting argument. It's still being, moved through the courts. We're going to see what happens there. But as a result of that, it's created a kind of a climate where people in the reparations workspace, and there's a lot of like lawyers and, legal minds attached to that as well, because this is a historic and a policy conversation. They've been trying to carefully kind of craft language that would avoid potential lawsuits. And like you said, Edith Ford expects that they're going to get sued no matter what they do, which is probably a fair bet, even just, regardless of what the policy proposals actually are, which we still don't have a really good idea of, like what is the reparations going to be. We don't really know that yet. Detroit is a very important, Black city in the country, and I think it's going to bring a lot of national attention when we do release a reparations proposal, and I think that could inspire, whether they're conservative or not, some groups, may decide to challenge this. So that's why it's important for the task force, to do its due diligence. They hired a writer who works at the Detroit Justice Center and has done a lot of civil rights work to write policy proposals that'll be recommended to the city council. And then I'm sure there's going to be like a legal review with the law department and the legislative policy division and all that. But that kind of was what colored Tuesday's presentation at the city council. I'd been expecting them to, ask for a little bit more time. I guess I didn't really expect them to talk about how, the climate around this has really changed since the ballot initiative was passed in 2021. Um, reparations is not a DEI program, but there is concern that this kind of overall, attack on DEI programs, both in the private sector as corporations kind of voluntarily dismantle those programs, as well as everything going on with the Trump administration and Doge and all of this. There's some heightened kind of concern about what we're going to be able to accomplish here. Now that said, the task force is really confident that they're going to be able to deliver something substantial, and they're talking about this being kind of a long term. This is not going to be like a set of recommendations that come and go. This is, they're trying to establish an office. They're trying to establish long-term funding. So, again, a lot has happened, but we're still kind of at the beginning of this conversation. And I don't know. I think what's stuck with me still is that public commenters are really connecting the dots on all of the harms that have been caused, both back, around Great Migration era as well as today. Some people were even talking about how the solar farms are kind of similar to slum clearance that happened, to put down I-375 and the highways. So, are those harms still ongoing? I don't know. I just think it's a really rich topic. I'm really interested to see where it goes.
So much to be raised in reference to this. I do think that as we started the whole concept at the crux of this, as I've been upraising and uplifting so much, is that this is so much more about municipal harms. And I've had further discussions in the screenings of the video essay about the reparations activists and advocates of reparations, Ray Jenkins, Joanne Watson, and also John Conyers in the A Debt Owed, Not a Handout. I've been doing a series of screenings all through this month, and really from Juneteenth of last year. I'll be doing the final screening this Friday. That will be Friday, February 28th. So that's tomorrow at 6 p.m. at WC3 Eastern Campus, 5901 Connor Street. You can join us. It's a free event partnered with Hood Research, and we're going to have a discussion afterwards. And these discussions have brought about a lot of different thoughts, especially from screening these with high school students to groups of seniors and all in the mix between. Different thought processes from a lot of different people. One of the key focuses of obviously the reparations work of reparations Ray Jenkins, the Honorable Joanne Watson, and John Conyers was looking at what our people faced from enslavement. Black folks here in America have faced being enslaved by America even before America existed. You can look at Nicole Hannah-Jones' 1619 Project for some of that premise, and so many other spaces and places. I mean, you can look at Hidden Colors and a lot of other documentary series and other things that speak to the horrors that we experienced as a people here. And even Bullwhip Days and so many other spaces and places speaking about the enslavement horrors. And also, so much has been uplifted about what was faced during Jim Crow, what was faced during Reconstruction, what was faced during, as you say, I guess what would we call it? Urban remodeling, and just a lot of the displacement of Black folks strategically, consistently. I definitely find what just took place with the solar farms another one of those harms that exploit the pervasive poverty that exists in these Black communities that have been so often neglected. James Tate spoke directly to this at the Detroit Policy Conference hosted by the Regional Chamber at the top of the year, saying that, yes, people welcome selling their homes, but the reason they're selling their homes for what was offered was because the city never offered anything else to those communities before that. This was the only option and opportunity. And, I've been a strong opponent of that just because this is called neighborhood solar, which is so different than what's advocated for by community solar groups like Solidarity that I work with. And Mama Gloria with We Want Green and many others. Community solar is shared by residents. This is another way where you're extracting something from a Black community and you're placing assets there that the Black community, I guess by saying that it'll be used by the municipality, can use, but it's not directly for us, and given more of these talks, the three things that continuously become so pervasive are the extractive, predatory, and destructive nature of the ways that institutional infrastructures of America engage with the Black community and Black people in general. And this is even when Black people are in positions connected to these institutions themselves. So you could say, like, well, this is, Black government. How is Black government extracting, destructive, and predatory towards Black people? I mean, the reflections can be communities like mine when we look at what's being poured in and the lack of resources and the assets available, which our next story kind of talks to a different frame of reality. What we really think about how these institutional structures interact and engage with others that aren't like mine, with the plight of my people, and the way that things have happened historically for and to our people. Well, it's just tragic, and the efforts of the task force, even within the task force, is interpersonal conflicts from time to time. We definitely see very strong personalities, that the perspective of someone that started this, like a Keith Williams, is so different, I believe, than like a Janice Hazel that has so much work. I mean, even going back to working with Congressman Conyers with HR 3745 as this has started, like the perspectives of what victory looks like is so different. And this is often what's stirred up when you have these discussions, because everybody sees what it is, what it should look like, and who is for so different depending upon their perspective. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, the eligibility, who is it for? Who's going to be able to apply for this is still being decided. They're talking about potentially a lineage-based model might be better than just proving like ethnicity. So, for example, in Evanston, they were really targeting housing discrimination that follows a very similar pattern to what happened in Detroit and a lot of other cities with redlining and housing covenants and deed restrictions and all of that. So what Evanston did is they said if you lived in the city between like 1919 and 1970, basically, or you have a direct relative who did, you're eligible for this program. I believe you also have to be Black, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So, tying it to a harm that was caused by the government has always seemed to be the best kind of legal route for this. But they don't have a firm answer on that. I think if you ask different task force members, they might have different answers for you. Same thing on, what is the top kind of like priority going to be for this? I think there's general alignment around, housing, um, being able to open businesses, and things like that. I mean, but again, I mean, there's not really been a lot that I can point you to. Even in this presentation on Tuesday, there wasn't like these are kind of the things that we're heading in. I mean, it was more kind of discussion about what they've done to identify the harms, which serves as a foundation. But I think that indicates there is still some disagreement among members potentially. I mean, I've certainly witnessed a lot of it. I can't say what the state of that is. It seems like they're getting along pretty well, and some of those personality disputes have been hammered out.
Yeah.
So I do think they're finding consensus. They found a way to work together, but I just wish I had more to say about what the reparations proposals were going to actually be, because so much is going to depend on that. And we're just not really there yet. So
Yeah, which brings us to, like I say, the next story. The next story, Detroit settles blight lawsuits with Dennis, Lord knows his Greek name. I'm not going to say it correct. Kefallinos.
I think it's Kefallinos.
Kefallinos. Okay, so
everybody knows who we're talking about, though.
Yes, the owner of Nikki's Pizza, if we want to be direct and just kind of go into like a owner of many properties throughout the city of Detroit and downtown, has been a person that's owned many properties and a lot of suits, but major step addressing neglected properties. City of Detroit settled 13 lawsuits involving 108 properties owned by Dennis Kefallinos. Kefallinos must spend $850,000 to demolish a commercial building at 4545, Lord knows,
Beneto. It's right by the Stellantis plant.
Yeah. A court-appointed receivership to determine if they will be developed or demolished. $922,400 in unpaid blight tickets as well. This is going to give the city of Detroit the ability to walk back into court whenever there's a violation and start the conversation with the court. Conrad Mallett, corporate counsel, spoke to this. Also, Conrad Mallett said, why are we constantly in a battle for the city's future with people who own property? One of the largest commercial landlords throughout the city of Detroit with many blight tickets. And this has been like one of those back and forth fights with the city of Detroit for a long time. We're also know of like for so many years. Right now, I guess it's a gem in history, but the fights that the city of Detroit had with Matty Maroon. I mean, to the point where like even as senior citizen, he chose to go to jail over back and forth things of other properties in and around the Ambassador Bridge, leading to what would be the Gordie Howe Bridge, and also Pistons owner at the time. He's passed on, Bill Davidson, and a lot of the properties he sat on for years, and his family and the trust. Like there are realities that exist that are played completely different in the city of Detroit and many other places. In the city of Detroit, it looks so much worse because this is such a majority Black city, and you have so many business people that do business here and extract from the city. Like I say, extraction, destructive, and predatory. Those are the three things that can be looked at. And he's not alone. There's so many other business owners that sit because the thought process is, okay, I can just sit on property and speculate that it's going to be worth something one day. I have the attorneys to fight these battles. We have the resources to exploit the cogs in the systems to move forward. And this is something where the city of Detroit is definitely applauding today. What could happen with these lawsuits moving forward and so many of those blight tickets. What's your perspective on this, Malachi?
Yeah, this is oh man, such a common thing. Dennis is probably, one of the highest profile examples of it, where people will buy up large tracts of land and basically not do anything with it, and sit on it, whether it's vacant properties or buildings. A lot of Kefallinos' holdings are commercial buildings that are slowly deteriorating. To be fair to him, I mean, there've been interviews where Kefallinos has talked about having good intentions and wanting to improve the city, but it's really difficult when you purchase a building and the roof's caving in and it's expensive and there's a lot of challenges with that and so on and so forth. Residents and city council members feel that Kefallinos is really holding back progress in a lot of neighborhoods by owning this land and not doing anything with it, and owning potentially pretty valuable property in commercial corridors, historic buildings. One of his holdings is the old YMCA building in Southwest across the street from Clark Park. I've been talking with some folks who look at that as a potential housing or shelter space, but currently, it's kind of just sitting there. I think he did some work to renovate that. He actually got in trouble with the state environmental department for not doing some asbestos work on that building. But the city tries to work with these folks. It's an interesting kind of case study in how this guy accumulated close to $1 million in blight tickets that are all going to get waived through the settlement. He won't have to pay the city back for any of that. And in exchange, he's going to, basically promise to follow the law, something he already should have been doing, and demolish a few of his buildings potentially too. So,
and
is that a win for the city? That's what Conrad Mallett says, that this is something that we negotiated and we got kind of what we were looking for, that these buildings are going to be put into compliance. Some of them will be upgraded. Some of them will be demolished. But Councilmember Latisha Johnson was like, couldn't we have got the money for the blight tickets and got him to do all this stuff? And I don't know, this was a 5-month legal negotiation. I don't know the details of all of it, but on its face, that's, people feel like this is kind of an unfair system that gets, works for big property owners.
And then the other reality is, I've known a lot of people that have stayed in properties that are not up to code and left without their space. The Russell Industrial, I think, is one of the more prominent spaces where, a very creative space offering opportunities for creatives to do certain things. And certain creatives obviously chose to, okay, I'm gonna live here and everything. But due to like what was open, what is shut down, when things are open, when things are shut down. He's had other loft spaces where I know people have stayed and it wasn't up to code, and everyone needs to leave. So the displacement of people that have stayed in these spaces. And then, here's a classic story. Back when I was a food delivery driver, I actually met him. And this is like real old school. Like, I want to say like maybe we had a food order. It may have been like $3,500, but he was one of those old school guys that write out the hand check. So like he wrote the check out and handed it to me. So it was very interesting just to see. I'm like, man, this is interesting that this multimillionaire can take some time and write a check. It may have been he's in the office that day, but I thought that was also something interesting in his character that spoke of then. And then that would just also carry, because I was like, man, that's the same guy. When another friend I know was living in a loft, and within like 2 days it was shut down for fire code safety, and found themselves unhoused like that, and the other side of this also, as you say, is how do you repair structures? How do you work? But the reality of people with more resources being able to navigate within these systems, and they've definitely shown bad faith over time. I'm sure you have Russell Industrial stories as well, because it's one of the places that creatives go. But how long you can stay there, how long you can't stay there, who knows?
Yeah. Another interesting part of this lawsuit is Kefallinos agreed to identify all of his properties to the city, which is interesting because he owns a lot of them under different LLC names.
Yep.
And he owns some of them by selling them to family members who then also have, a series of LLCs. So the city's had a really hard time even tracking like who owns some of these buildings and what's, who do we go after and who do we hold accountable when the building begins to crumble. And Conrad Mallett, the corporation counsel for the city, top lawyer for the city, was advocating for Wayne County to change some of its rules around allowing people to sell property direct family members. This is something I want to look into a little bit more. But basically, he was saying this is a way that Kefallinos and other people have avoided, paying blight tickets or other things like that. When they get to a certain point, they just sell that property to somebody kind of in their network, and that stuff apparently goes away. So I might be getting, some of that mischaracterized, but Mal was saying basically this is a tool that developers have used. And I'm looking at Property Praxis and Outlier. I've done some great work to kind of catalog who the most notorious speculators are in the city and how much they own. And the map that I'm looking at says he owns about 300 some properties in the city. That was at least in 2024. I don't know if that's still the case. And there's like 5 or 6 different LLCs that I've seen, attached to some of these properties, and they're all over the city. So, this is part of what Duggan wanted to address with his land value tax that didn't really go anywhere. But the idea that folks like Kefallinos are able to buy property on the cheap sit there, not do anything with it, and then sell it when it, when the neighborhood begins to redevelop. But the problem is the neighborhood won't redevelop until something is done with some of the land, and sitting there and
Yeah.
not doing anything with it undermines the growth that can happen. And so that, just again to kind of tie it back to a lot of the frustrations that I hear with people, it's that, hey, we the community, we the neighborhood, we the stakeholders of this space who have been here and kept the neighborhood in good condition, uh, deserve to have more say in what happens, and that includes property ownership. But folks who are not from those neighborhoods are able to buy up land and basically stifle progress. That's the way it was described by Councilmember Johnson and others.
Yeah. And along with that, like we say, my pushback on the land value tax, like on paper, that looks good, but this goes back to like structures are in place to go after so many of the larger bad actors already. Send the resources there and have our corporation council go in that direction. Like this quote unquote deal, as Councilmember Johnson said, doesn't necessarily have to be so much of an offer and compromise.
Yeah. It was interesting to hear Mallett say that basically he said, why are we in constant battle for the city's future with people who own property? People who have a stake, their property is protected by the police and fire department. They benefit from the Department of Public Works. They benefit from all of these city resources paid for by your tax dollars. We're all contributing to the services that allow, some of these properties to be there. And Mallett has just been in court over and over again with folks like Kefallinos over blight and not maintaining those buildings. So,
Yep. So with that, another public comment. Make sure you continue to check this out. We're seeing everything growing. I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments and everything. Email info@detroitisdifferent.com. Email info@detroitisdifferent.com. I know it's many candidates running for council, running for police commissioner, and so much more. We're going to begin rolling out some campaign election voter information stuff here at Public Comment. We're going to get the ball rolling with a new project, Detroit Next first, but here we're going to definitely be unpacking so much more, as it's going to be a very spirited election season, as we're already seeing so far. And with that being said, Malachi, let the people know.
Yeah, come find us at bridgedetroit.com. A lot of what we talk about in this notebook or in this public comment show comes from my reporting in the City Council notebook, which comes out every Wednesday morning. It's free. You can subscribe by going to bridgedetroit.com. There's a lot of stuff in there too that we don't talk about. And we are also on the heels of launching another partnership between Detroit is Different and Bridge Detroit. We are calling it Detroit Next. It's going to be a conversation show about the mayoral election and all of the different dynamics that come with that. Myself and Stephen Henderson.
Wait. Also city council and many other things.
That's true.
A lot on mayor.
There's a lot of elections this year too. Yeah. So municipal elections is really what we're focused on, mayor being at the top of that. But city council, clerk, board of police commissioners, there's going to be a lot going on that people are going to need good information on. So our goal is to basically just give you, straight information about all the candidates. What are kind of the big themes? What do people want to see? Hopefully do some kind of imagining and agenda setting as well based on conversations with residents, and try to bring some of that to the candidates. Say, look, we're hearing this from people that they want more attention on X and Y issue. What are you going to do about that? And bring on, guests as well. And we'd like to bring on some just like average, regular people. We'd love to get the perspective of just folks who are trying to navigate this confusing political landscape that we're in. But that will be dropping soon. You can find that on the Bridge Detroit YouTube channel, as well as our social pages. But yeah, I don't know. The main thing is we're a nonprofit newsroom. We would love your support. We definitely need your feedback to make sure we're on the right track. And you can go to bridgedetroit.com to figure out how to support us in all of those efforts.
Yeah, definitely. Because city council, I believe, will be very much changed over. We already know that 2 seats won't be returning, right? So that means a new city council president, but also pay attention, all new districts. That changes the game. as we're seeing so many people move west, east ain't what the same is. So many of the districts have changed. City council is going to be very interesting, to say the least. That being said, peace. You're watching Public Comment every Thursdays at 8 a.m. The live stream. Detroit is different and Bridge Detroit. Local politics of Detroit.